They've expanded the business over the last decade and have a really strong focus on productivity and land development. It's a big operation, currently weaning over 11,000 lambs each year, and with a really strong focus on welfare. And yeah, Tim's going to talk to us about lamb survival and all things to do with that. Just as you come up, Tim, a question for you. In your opinion, what's one barrier to adoption? We're going to hear lots of ideas today, and I'm sure a lot of them are ideas that people have heard before. What's going to stop them from going home and putting it into practice, and how might we be able to flick that? Thanks.
Thanks, Roger, for asking me a really easy question. Appreciate that. Probably, I think one of the barriers at the moment is really labour, probably in agricultural industry, and you know, a part of what I'll talk about today is trying to utilise a little bit more labour, try and be efficient, but use labour at the right time. And I think those of us in the sheep industry are probably trying to run a squillion sheep and really efficiently, and we don't actually up our labour at the key times of when we actually harvest most of our profits. So I'll talk a little bit about that. Thanks very much for the invitation to come and talk up in New South Wales. I actually chose to drive up here yesterday, and I sort of got about 8 hours in and sort of regretted that decision. But I did admire all the feed and the grass and how lush it was. It was amazing how great it looks at the moment, and I know I can't even think about how 3 years of drought would have looked, and I know that's it's just wonderful that you've got a couple of back-to-back cracking years to rejuvenate and reinvigorate your enthusiasm for ag. So I'm going to just play a little video just so it gives you a bit of an idea of our landscape and that sort of thing for a start. Righto, it's dry and we're feeding an absolute bucket load of grain at the moment, so it doesn't look anything like that video. But you would have seen one of the shots there about that we do contain sheep, and we've been doing that strategically since the 2006 drought, and it was great to hear Jack's talk there this morning, and it's been a very powerful tool for us over the years to building up a feed wedge and looking after our grain cover. So that sort of pretty much sums us what we do. We're fairly reliable, winter rainfall dominant. We've actually had a reasonable amount of summer rain this year, which is unusual. Our break sort of tends to arrive in April or May, and we get a majority of our rain during the winter. June, July, August are our wettest months. We cross our fingers and hope that we get a spring, and then we sort of generally look forward to a pretty hot, dry summer, kill a few worms, maintain condition on our sheep, get them joined and conceived, and then set ourselves up again. So it's sort of pretty bloody boring compared to a lot of you guys that have, you know, a bit more opportunity to trade and do those sort of things. But I guess, yeah, it's got its pluses as well. This is just a bit of a map of the the farms, and one of the things I'll point out is that, you know, our paddock size compared to the average in our environment is probably a third of the size of the average paddocks in my neighbours. So we're quite anal on our land classing and things like that, and grazing management, addressing the soil types and topography really well. And that also leads into being able to manage your lambings and shelter and things like that better also. So 3 things that I spoke in Gippsland a couple of weeks ago, and Gippsland's a little bit like New South Wales. It's about knee deep in lush green grass, and I was supposed to talk about resilience, and here they are, just, you know, grass coming out their ears, and with all the COVID things, and I suppose that these conferences have come a little bit later than normal, but, you know, to break down resilience, and Catherine spoke about resilience, what it meant to her, and, you know, especially from a people side of things. You know, from our point of view, I mean, being really productive as a business is super important, and reproduction and managing your repro and your sheep flock is one of the key things of productivity, as we know, and stocking rate and growing grass. But discipline, and this flows on from what Elise was talking about with things like condition scoring, and also what Nathan was talking about with EID and things. You know, Elise, I think she had three key times of the year that are pretty important to condition score you use. Anyone that works for me, whether it's a contractor or staff, know that the first question that I'm going to ask at smoko time or at lunchtime, it was, what was the bloody condition score of that mob of ewes that you had in this morning? And with a hand, so all you need is a hand and mobile phone. There's a fantastic app that AWI have produced with the Lifetime Ewe Management app for condition scoring, and it's a great tool. And discipline, whether it's weighing sheep or condition scoring those ewes every time they're in the yards. And I mean every time they're in the yards, unless they were in yesterday. And we don't bring sheep into sheep yards for recreational purposes. We're not all Kiwis. Sorry to the Kiwis in the room. But we either put them down a sheep draft or we put them up a drenching race. So there's a perfect opportunity to actually sample, put a hand on at least 5% of those, that mob. And efficiency, as Nathan was talking about before, efficiency, you know, we try and run as efficient operation as we can. We've been industry benchmarked for over 25 years, and running a good amount of DSEs per full-time labour unit is super important for us, because labour is a big cost. So that's all what we everyone tries to do. Stealing that term from Bill Malcolm from Melbourne Uni, you know, that's what we all strive to do. So this is a gory slide. This is pretty much what Sarah spoke about this morning and Catherine spoke about. Is about that animal welfare that we've got to work on as an industry. So in our business, and I would assume that hopefully it's the same in all your sheep businesses, that is when we incur the most loss, is in that late pregnancy, early lactation period. So that's where our effort is going to go. So this is, a lot of you would have seen this in manuals and things over the years, but there's a lot of things going on, whether it's to do with development of wool follicles in progeny in ewes, as Elise was talking about, to actually managing the pregnancy of those ewes leading up to lambing. Again, Elise has already covered this, but we've been scanning for multiples in our ewes for 27 years. So please crawl out from underneath the rock that you live if you have not been pregnancy scanning ewes. it is a must-do to manage the nutrition appropriately to your ewes, so do it. And if you're doing the process, please identify twins and singles, and I would argue that you need to start identifying triplets. And a lot of people haven't got the answers for triplets, and I'm one of those people that haven't got the answer for triplets, but we've got to try. And we've got to try and try and try until we actually get it right, and we work out some sort of recipe to getting it better than what we do. So this is all stuff that you know. So, you know, we know if we feed our sheep appropriately, that we'll get the best conception we can. We know the importance of weaning. Weaning is really important, especially in hard times, but weaning on time every time, condition scoring disciplines, feed testing the supplements that you're actually feeding your stock. Don't guess. You know, there's barley and there's barley, and there's wheat and there's wheat, and there's silage and there's silage, and there's a hell of a lot of room in between a good sample and a bad sample. And like us, we don't grow any of our feed. We're a net buyer of all our hay and our grain. So it's super important that we get a feed test on. And feed budget, obviously that goes hand in hand. I was lucky we were at one of the sites in the maternals project, which was a follow-on from the Lifetime Wool project, to look at maternal sheep and the influences and how they behave a little bit differently to the traditional merino sheep that Lifetime Wool research was done on. And one of the key things that came out of that research was that you can't just rely on weaning and ewe recovery alone. So if you are really good at keeping condition score on your ewes during lactation, there's a 10% bonus on your carryover reproduction given the same condition score. So if you had a light ewe and a heavy ewe, and you fed one better at lactation as opposed to the other one, you would get a 10% kicker on your repro the following year. So that's very exciting. Shelter. So shelter is super important. There's been so much work done on the benefits of providing shelter to newborn lambs, and it goes back a long, long way. This is one of the probably one of the most exciting information-packed pages in the Lifetime Ewe manual. It's in, I think, session 4. And what that, I don't expect you all to be able to read that, but what it has is condition score, feed on offer, and whether it's a mild, you know, below average to severe wind chill impacts, and also the amount of percentage of survival with singles and twins. So as you can see, that if you had nothing going for you, if you had a light ewe with no grass and she had twins on board and you actually put it in a protected paddock, you would get a pretty good result. So as you can see up sort of up on the top right, where we try and aim every year with our multiple bearing ewes is down the bottom there. So making sure we've got fit ewes on the right amount of feed in a protected paddock, and we do that hell or high water. The impacts on condition score, and as Elise pointed out with birth weight, this microphone's annoying me, and also just providing the right amount of feed and that right environment, and the amount of hours that a newborn lamb spends with its mother is super important. So you can see there on the very old graph to the right that if ewe and lamb can bond for at least 6 hours, you have a really good lamb survival outcomes. So that's something that's been known for a long, long time. So what is precision lambing? So what am I talking about? Basically, it's being able to join your ewes in really short intervals. So we can manage our ewes in a similar stage of pregnancy. We can have a short precise lambing time, and we also pull the trigger really accurately on our weaning time. So, why is it important? So we've understood in the sheep industry for a long time all the key targets, whether it's a condition score target, it's a feed on offer target, and also, in relation to shelter. So we've known all these key themes for a long time to get a really good outcome. But when we go to lamb and we're lambing over an extended period of time, sometimes those key thresholds, the U condition, just disappears, the feed on offer disappears out of the paddock, and all that is compromised. So we needed a system, and we need to sort of throw a lot of the tradition out the window and do it better. So what I'm challenging you guys to think about is there a way that we can actually do it naturally with our putting rams in the paddocks of ewes. So we're now, over the years, I've gone from a 6-week lambing when I first started farming to 5 weeks to 4 weeks. Then I went down to 21 days. Now all our ewes are joined for 15 days. And then we have strategic gaps in between. So we also use teasers to get those ewes cycling, and then we go in and join our ewes, and we only join the right amount of ewes that we can successfully put in sheltered paddocks. So it's sort of working backwards. If you've got 200 hectares of pretty good lambing country for twins, then you join the right amount of ewes to supply you the right amount of twins. So some of the anyway, there's a hell of a lot of information here. I know what Pinion Advisory are like. They're going to crack a whip in a minute, so I'll flick through a few. But there's plenty of stuff online to look at. So being able to use your natural assets, doesn't matter if you're in Dubbo, Millthorpe, where I was yesterday, or Dunkeld, or wherever you are in southern Australia, you've got good, bad, and really good lambing paddocks. So we've all got different farms, different natural assets, and it's just being able to utilise the best parts of your farm multiple times. Just because Grandad lambed up on that bloody hill paddock doesn't mean that you have to. Just because a paddock has got some of the best pasture on your farm doesn't mean that it actually is good to lamb on. So it's best to get your lambs alive, and then once they're alive, then move them to that good pasture. But it's very difficult to do that if you're lambing over 5 or 6 weeks. So looking at your farm from a different perspective, so more from a lamb survival perspective. So land classing is still important, but to look at it from a different perspective. And I tell a few young blokes that farm near me that stripping down to your footy nicks and running around on a 4-wheeler in the middle of July and just see on which parts of the farm that you can hack it on. That'll tell you where you want to put your twin-bearing ewes. So your paddock, your actual paddock size or mob size. So mob size is something that we have been doing for a long time. So none of our twin-bearing mobs actually lamb in mobs over 50 ewes. Our triplets are even less than that. So selecting the right paddock for shelter, having the right mob size, then the right amount of feed, having fit ewes, not fat ewes, and being able to supervise and provide a little bit of privacy during that lambing is super important. As you can see in that photo there's twins in the valley, there's nothing lambing on top of the hill, and there's triplets in the nice sheltered creek below. So just consider how you fence up your farm or those riparian areas. We've gone out a little bit wider on our creeks just to provide those areas for sheep like triplets where they've got awesome amount of privacy. Collect data. We've got paddock spreadsheets and spreadsheets and spreadsheets of data, which from the stocking rate, how many fetuses goes in that paddock, how many lambs we count out, how much ewe mortality, and then we can actually critique which paddocks are good and bad or ugly. Summarise your results and make changes. Know the importance of how important twins are to your flock. The yellow is the twins, so it's easy to say that they're probably 5 times more important than singles. The bottom 2 graphs there are quite interesting. The one in 2020 came from a scanning of 185 fetuses. The one in 2021 came from a scanning of 193 fetuses. Where do I want to be? All I did from 185 to 193 was increase my triplet rate. Triplets are a pain in the ass, and they die, and they cause your ewes to die at a higher rate too. So where do I want to be on my scanner this year? I'm aiming for 185. That's where I want to be. All I've done is turn twins into triplets, and it's, you know, your lamb survival will go down. So know what drives your system. You know, things like discipline with your heavy and light management, for instance, like Elise was talking about. We've kept our rising 2-year-old sheep in the last 3 years under a dry rate of 0.5%, and all of those rising 2-year-old sheep have lambed as lambs. So that is where you do your light, mid and heavy management of sheep under 2-year-old. The rest of our sheep, because we differentially manage them so precisely, you can throw a blanket over their condition score. The singles and the twins and the triplets all come together at weaning at a pretty much a very tight range of condition scores. That's what we've got to aim at. The bottom line there is our lamb survival rate as our scanning and weaning goes up. I've got to stop. Yeah, there's plenty of information on the website you can have a look at. And I'll just, can I got 1 minute? No, I've got 1 minute. All right, thanks very much. Geez, that went quick.
Yeah. Thanks very much, Tim. Yeah, some really interesting stuff there. And yeah, it's easy to see that you've really been putting into practice the things that some of us know we should have been for a number of years and reaping the rewards. So we've got 5 minutes for some quick questions. So if you had anything jotted down, stick your hand up. We'll come around with a roving mic. Joe's got the first one to kick us off. Who's it for, Joe?
Yeah, it's a good question. And as I said, like, we're all farming different landscapes, and we're about 350 metres above sea level. So we've got some of the worst lambing paddocks, you know, southwest facing hilltops with no trees, and they just get, it's just lamb death zone. And then we've got really nice sheltered valleys that are, you know, fantastic for lamb survival. So we've been really utilising our natural assets and just going, well, we know, you know, that cuts wind speed from 60 k's an hour back to 15 k's an hour. So in a scenario of wind chill, severe wind chill back to very moderate wind chill, and, you know, if you can do that, it's huge, absolutely huge. If you haven't got a lot of natural shelter, the thing that scares me the most after an exposed paddock is a mob of ewes, twin-bearing ewes, in a big mob. Honestly, like, we've done the economics of electric reels and cutting paddocks into thirds or quarters, and we've got green grass, so we don't need water in there because 88 to 92% of grass is water. So we can lamb and subdivide those paddocks. And, you know, in a challenging year, you'll pick up more like 20 extra lambs per 100 by just cutting a mob from 100 back to 50 or 150 back to 75. Mis-smothering is massive. So, yeah. So shelter number 1, mob size number 2, pretty close.
Have you seen any guys with fairly open country achieve some pretty impressive shelter options via, I don't know, trees or shrubs or that type of thing at all?
Yeah, there is. I mean, we can't plant enough trees probably. It's just that they're expensive and they take a while to get established. I think planting trees is a great thing to do. But there is, you know, some people have put, you know, even pegged out hessian and stuff in paddocks, but you know, it doesn't need much of a drop in the profile of a paddock. You know, you can be in volcanic plains between, you know, Lake Bolac and it looks pretty flat, but there might be a 3 metre drop in the profile of the land and the wind's going over the top. Remember, lambs are that high. They're not your height. Sometimes you just a little undulation, you know, in a big paddock can make a huge difference.
Thanks, Tim. Any other questions? Up the back.
Thank you. Got a question for Nathan. I think your monitoring the water system is amazing and really impressive. Have you had the opportunity to monitor different types of water and see the differences on animals or intakes or anything like that through the system?
We haven't, Luke, no. We do have, so we've got one reticulation system, we've got 3 water sources that pump into the one reticulation system. So there's a bore there, a dam, and then we pump out of Spices Creek as well. But it all goes into one system, so it all gets mixed up sort of thing. So no, I haven't really done any work with looking at different water sources, yeah.
Thanks. So I've got a question for Tim, just with regards to using teasers. Are you using them across all age groups? And I'm interested as to what time of the year you put rams out and indeed the teasers.
Yeah, we put teasers in at around about sort of 0.8 to 1% for 14 days with mature ewes. So we're actually putting rams into ewe lambs, and teasers went into ewe lambs today, and our mature age ewes in the last sort of 6 weeks. So once you've teased an animal once, you know, she keeps spinning, that group of ewes will keep spinning, so we'll join for 15 days and then we have a 20 days off, and then we'll reintroduce a lighter percentage of rams to mop them up. Yeah, so it's been pretty exciting, really. Last year we got 89% of our ewes stuck in 15 days, which was great.
Sorry.
Thanks.
Elise, I just had a question for you. Have you done any work with merino ewes and eye muscle depth?
Well, in terms of the seed stock businesses that I work with, they're all scanning for eye muscle depth. Do you have anything more specific you wanted to ask?
Just with scanning and lambing percentages.
Right. No, so I suppose there would be an opportunity to look at the individual breeding value for eye muscle depth of a merino ewe and the impact that has on scanning and lambing percentages. I haven't looked at that, but there would be an opportunity. But I suppose just a general comment would be that we know condition score is obviously linked with reproductive outcomes, higher scanning and lambing rates. So if we think about putting our hand on an animal, we're essentially feeling the fat and muscle that she has in her loin region. So genetically fatter and more muscular animals, you would expect to have higher lambing rates. So that's probably just a comment that I would make there if we're wanting to build that resilience and reproduction into our ewes. You could achieve that genetically by putting more carcass onto them. It's quite a common theme in industry.
Thank you. And Luke?
Yeah, here you go. Question for Tim. How How far behind your mature ewes are your ewe lambs when you look at scanning, as a percentage?
Yeah, from a conception rate, it can be quite tricky on conception, as most of you would allude to, would know. So we think we've got our key targets of what we've got to get them to get a good result. They're generally 155 to 168 on conception, so probably around 20% back on our mature age ewes. The thing that we all battle is, we campybacks those ewe lambs, and that's the only disease that we've got a vaccination for. There's lots of other things that come out of left field, whether it's toxo or listeria or things like that can cause some problems in late pregnancy. But I think we've got a pretty good. We sort of aim for 90% conception out of those ewe lambs. That has varied over the years, but generally, if we hit our targets, we've put an auto feedlot in this year to actually help us dial up that exact growth rate pattern during teasing and joining to get that right outcome, because it's been a bit hit and miss.
And what do you find your survival rate is? Like in scanning in your ewe lambs, out of that potential, what's your survival rate of your fetuses?
The best we've done, I reckon on average we are 75-78%. So the losses are significant and annoying. Yep.
Thanks everyone. We've got our beef session coming back in for the next one all together. So can we have a round of applause for our sheep speakers? They'll be around for the rest of the day, so please catch them over lunch if you've got any further questions, or look them up after today.